I haven't been completely honest with you over the past 6 months, and it is time to put that right and tell you what we've really been up to in what is without a doubt the biggest project I've ever attempted. Welcome to part 1 of Let's Buy Commodore. In the wrong place. It's meant to be yellow. Welcome to Commodore Corner, a space that we've built to honour the legacy, maybe even the future, of what is undoubtedly my favourite retro computing brand, apart from all the other ones. Now, this isn't what took me 6 months, and I'm not a hippie all about manifestation, but I do think that when you visualise or physically build a space for something very special, you are more likely to step into it and then make that thing work, to make it become real.
You literally just defined manifestation.
Fair point. Well, as those of you who are members of our Patreon know, sadly, Grannyfractic passed away fairly recently, leaving us this space and about 16 boxes of unopened dot matrix printer paper. But what's it all for, I hear you ask?
What's it all for?
I know, I said I could hear you ask that. Well, maybe this is the beginnings of what might even become a brand new Commodore HQ. Let me explain. For the past few months, as some really fantastic retro creators have kindly stood in for us here on the channel with my 2-up takeovers, I told you this. Now, while Family Fractic takes a long overdue break travelling the globe in search of rare retro tech and TV treasures to share with all of you, call me Indiana Joysticks, we are switching to Retro Recipes co-op mode.
What I told you was true, from a certain point of view.
Now, a lot of that travelling was actually for a series of international meetings for this very project, and that rare retro tech treasure that we're trying to save is the Commodore brand itself.
Let's buy Commodore.
I know I'm not the only one who's felt it, like Commodore's been crying out to be saved. Not just remembered and owned by people who basically do nothing with it, but genuinely rebooted back to its 80s and 90s stature. Because dead brands needn't stay dead. And not refounded by another faceless group or as a hollow cash grab, but perhaps for the first time ever in tech history, by us, the community who lived it, loved it, and never forgot it. And if this all works, and at the time of filming this, I genuinely don't know if it will be because of all of you, because of the community, the grown-up kids who wished it had never gone bankrupt and can help us join this very special mission to save Commodore. But I do want you to know that everything I've been doing here, I'm not doing it for me, well, not just for me, but for every one of you, every one of us who just loves the 80s and 90s, and for who Commodore is and was and always will be truly special. And because of that, we of course welcome collaboration with any of the other Commodore fan groups around the world in all of what we're doing here. Grazie. I think there is more than enough history, art and opportunity for all of us to share. So we're not operating in parallel, but we're truly doing it together. After all, so many of us shared that happiness of childhood nostalgia. Commodore computer appearing in our bedroom, sparking a love of play, coding, and rare moments with our parents. Time we'd do anything to relive.
I think I would trade a lot to have 5-10 minutes of my childhood back. It's like a hard thing to swallow right now, and to know that you're getting older, and it's like, I'd give anything to have that time back then.
It was the dawn of home computing, not a scary time like today's AI and other tech leaps, but just pure magic. At the age of 14, like I've told you before, I would pore over the Commodore User's Guide and tech magazines, studying the names of the people responsible for all of this and just dreaming of being Bill Hurd designing the, Commodore 128, or David Pleasance inventing the movie tie-in bundle, or Bob Yans designing the SID chip. I swear that thing is alive. I even dreamed of being handed the CEO baton by Jack Tramiel himself, and hopefully not dropping it. Just a fantasy, of course, fueled by Coca-Cola and SID tunes and those Zap 64 magazines. But dreams have a funny way of sneaking back in. Years later, I became a Zap reviewer myself, working directly with its founders that I'd idolized. Roger Keane and its legendary cover artist Oliver Frey. And then somehow, I became editor, likely due to a massive clerical error. But when dreams sneak back in, you either chase them or you regret it forever. Now, if we're going to do this as a team, you need to get to know me just a little bit better. At the age of 8, I went to see the first ever movie I'd seen in a movie theatre cinema. It was Empire Strikes Back, and I went to see it with my dad, of course. And it pretty much changed my life. In fact, it certainly did. I dreamed of being in Star Wars. And I worked really, really hard on that dream, as well as taking Yoda's advice that I'd seen in that same movie. Do or do not. There is no try. And to date, I've worked on or been involved in, I think, about 8 or 9 Star Wars movies and games, although I don't like to talk about it. At the age of 10, I watched Knight Rider, and I learned that one man, yes, or woman, or dog, or toddler, can make a difference. Now, I told my sister that one day I would own Kit from Knight Rider. I can still remember where I was standing when I said it. I can remember her laughing at me. Hey sis, if you're watching now, here we are.
Stop posing and get in. We've got to tell them about our plan to save Commodore.
Then Back to the Future hit when I was 12. We all dreamed of living in Hill Valley and being Michael J. Fox. Fast forward, and I've been jogging through Hill Valley for about a decade now, working at Universal Studios where it was made. But I also fancied myself as a bit of a Doc Brown, a bit of a mad scientist inventor. So we walked into Carphone Warehouse with a prototype cable tidy made from an old paint roller and walked out with an order for 10,000 units. And through all of this, I've learned one thing. Any of us, if we work hard enough, can turn dreams into reality. Now, you probably know the rest. I married the most understanding woman of all time. I mean, come on, she tolerated me building all of this. And we created an amazing little human who just astonishes me every day. And my gosh, I can't wait to introduce her to the Commodore 64 and do a bit of basic programming with her. But all that means there is still one dream left. Commodore, founded in 1958, wasn't just a company, it was a cultural moment. In the 80s, it was king, outselling Apple and Atari by double. The Commodore 64 didn't just sell 27 million units, if you quote Jack Tramiel, though the official figures are much less because apparently they didn't declare all the sales. But even with those smaller figures, it still holds the Guinness World Record for the best-selling home computer of all time. Bigger numbers than some religions, and with better sound. But no, it didn't just sell us that, it sold us the future. And the Amiga delivered it. Jack Tramiel's mission, of course, computers for the masses, not the classes. And it worked. But the years that followed weren't so kind. By the early 90s, Commodore lost its spark. Expensive management missteps, CDTV, and missed opportunities, Amiga, led to its collapse in 1994. And then the brand was bought up, licensed out, forgotten, misused. But incredibly, Commodore never truly went away. To this day, there are 47 official trademarks still existing, the oldest of which dates back to 1983. It's kind of amazing. And here's why that happened. In 1995, German PC maker Escom buys the brand for $14 million. 96, Escom collapses. Now, while I was filming a little indie movie called The Phantom Menace in 1997, we went from Star Wars to Commodore Wars, as it was a case of
Boys too there are.
A Commodore and an Amiga, because Amiga was split out to Gateway 2000 and Tulip Computers grabbed Commodore and parked it in a subsidiary. Then in 2005, while I was filming a little art house flick called Revenge of the Sith, it was also Revenge of the Tulip, selling Commodore to Geronimo for a cool $30 million thereabouts. And with a mouthful of renames from Commodore International to Talk to Reunite, someone was clearly having an identity crisis, we can at least give them kudos because they kept that intellectual property alive. In 2010, Reunite sold the marks to Commodore Licensing BV and AsiaRim ARM, but they defaulted on a loan. So in 2013, courtroom popcorn time, the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York confirms C Holdings BV, set up by AsiaRim, rightfully owns all of the Commodore IP, and it's now in the hands of AsiaRim's lenders, Chickens, Lips, the lot.
To chickens with lips.
Then in 2014, while Ladyfractic and Mr. Ladyfractic were working on student films The Force Awakens and then Rogue One, one rogue company, Palab Holdings NV, awakens Commodore's force from C Holdings only to Holdings onto it quietly for 7 years because, well, no disrespect to them, but as they didn't own Commodores as kids and as they got the rights because someone defaulted on a loan, I don't think they really knew what to do with it. Then in 2021, Commodore Corporation BV, still in the Netherlands just like Tulip was, inherits the trademarks from Palab's renamed Net BV and becomes today's legal owner of all 47 Commodore trademarks, the courts having effectively ratified direct lineage from Jack Tremmel's Commodore. Maybe it's why, according to CNN, 87% of people still recognize the iconic Chicken Lips logo. So yes, the name lived on, but the soul kind of drifted. For years, I've watched from the sidelines, as all of you have as well, year after year, as Commodore released groundbreaking tech like this. And who can forget the Commodore Gravel-In Pocket? Yes, that's really real. I think I'll call our first product the Dust in My Pants. And all the while I was thinking, someone needs to fix this. Someone. To be fair, many have tried. Probably Mike from Cloanto is the one that's kept the flame alive as much as anyone can. He owns the Commodore ROMs, regularly licenses out to projects for free, and a lot of the Amiga stuff now, and even stuff like old Commodore commercials. Now, I did actually try, very loosely speaking, to fix all this. In 2015 or thereabouts, I emailed Commodore, whoever it was then, and asked if they had any shares available, rather naively. And the reply said, yes, we have stock options starting at $20 million. I bought 3.2. Jump to 2022 and I toss a joking post on a Facebook Commodore page about buying Commodore. The flood of yes please replies astonishes me and plants a seed that slowly grew until recently something blossomed. You see, Sean Donoghue of My Retro Computer Limited, who along with its OS's creator Leo Nigro are insanely passionate about Commodore, offered to send me a Commodore 64X PC. An official Commodore computer? What? Yes, please. Now, I didn't know Sean back then at all, but I've since learned that his crowdfunding campaign for this left him £87,000 in debt in fulfilling all of these orders. And he's not the only one serving the community in this way. Jim Drew, for example, has poured in his own funds to perfect replacement C64 keycaps, so lunatics like me can finally build a brand new Commodore 64 around the ultimate piece of hardware, literally, Gideon's incredible Ultimate 64. Or for a chip-based solution, the Evo 64 board, all with a case from either Individual Computers or Jake Young at Retrofusion, or the one we had printed by PCBWay, where you can get great quality prototypes and of course PCBs starting at just $5. Because as we all know, PCB stands for
PERIFAX Commodore buys.
And with all these new Commodore parts, we could even release that all-new real Commodore 64. Maybe even call it the Commodore 64 Ultimate or something, built by the fans for the fans. Doesn't have any fans. It's not a great slogan, but we'll work on it. But back to the X, there was a bit of a snag. Sean couldn't afford the Commodore license fee anymore. Rumour has it they were asking something like 15% plus $5,000 minimum a year, plus 5% of your revenue. So Sean said,
I'm going to...
No, it was not Yoda. He said, I'm going to call it the My 64X, not the Commodore 64X. And I sort of winced. You know, I was just convinced that would be a false economy for Sean. After a lot of, and I mean a lot, of late night emails from me, Sean finally relented and said, okay, go ahead and make the video, call it the Commodore 64X. And I did, but I warned him it would be honest. And it was. Oh. This is just fantastic. This is, I think, the most exciting thing that I've ever received. Beautiful.
Welcome to Commodore OS Vision.
Feel like a kid at Christmas in 1982. This is a new Commodore, our Commodore Amiga, running on our Commodore 64. Fully grown adults literally cried in the comments. So did I. That's really special. And during the video, a bigger vision was proffered. It is cool that there are all these different companies. Wouldn't it be great if they all came together? I'd love to create a conglomerate, call it the Commodore, or something like that houses everything, and we could just all be friends, and yeah, instead of the little squabbles that keep happening. Because this is what it's all about, man. Sorry. But here's the thing, it exploded. The video, not the computer. It has about 1 million views right now, and miniitx.com is sold out for the next 9 months. They even had to put a special message on their website. Sean was very happy with me, but also Commodore were very happy with me. That's not a phrase I ever thought I'd say. And then it hit me. The love is definitely still there for the brand and for new Commodore computers. The fans are still there, but the leadership, true Commodore leadership, isn't. And then a surprise. Sean said he wanted me and Leo to join him. He said he'd quit if we didn't. No us, no more new Commodore 64s. Without him and my Retro Computer Limited, the dream would end. So we've stopped waiting for somebody else to fix this, to save Commodore, and decided we will. Now, we'd heard rumours that the current owners of Commodore have been trying to sell for years, but every deal collapsed. And now there's a real concern that they might walk away entirely, letting those 47 priceless trademarks expire, leaving them scattered and likely picked off by fragmented groups all around the world with no single unified vision. And then, true to form, of course, each group would start fighting with the other one for infringing their Commodore trademarks, and then instead of new Commodore machines being developed, you'd have 47 lawsuits. You know how that story plays out. This is it. It is now or never. Commodore needs us to save it. So Sean, Leo, and that guy with the funny voice have spent weeks secretly working on a strategy. Here's our battle plan. Let's try to negotiate an exclusive license with Commodore so that we can open this up to the entire community, but sub-license at a much fairer price than Sean ever got. Now, this sounds intense, but I've negotiated bedtime with a toddler. I'm ready. I've spent weeks working out a pitch video that we're going to use to really spell out to Commodore what the brand could really be in the hands of the fans, the way we'd honour the legacy while innovating the future. I mean, imagine Commodore back in classrooms using AR glasses created by Jeri Ellsworth's company Tilt 5, and the community products that should have always had the Commodore branding and that would help to do so. I mean, come on, the Mega 65, that should be the Commodore 65. Randy Rossi's VIC-2 Kawari, that should be the official Commodore 64 VIC-2 replacement chip. Gideon's Ultimate 64 should be the Commodore 64 official FPGA board. with maybe the Evo 64 or the C64 Reloaded Mark II as the official chip-based solutions. Then there are those new CIA chips and CPUs by Jani Laterkainen, long shelved, doubted by many, until a video helped spark things back into motion. A few weeks later, he'd finished them and they were up for sale on retro8bitshop.com. They should be branded Commodore. In fact, every replacement part, with the necessary QC testing, of course, which is very important, should be available so you can build and replace any part, that's not a real one, any part in a real Commodore 64 with the official Commodore replacement new part today. But put all of them on an official Commodore website in a new or replacement parts tab. It could become like the Amazon marketplace of retro. And wouldn't LEGO Group jump at the chance to build a real Commodore Brixty-4? Or what about Retro Games Limited and their fantastic and great fun creations, their mini consoles and the forthcoming Amiga 1200 full size from them? Come on, we all want that to be the Commodore A1200, don't we? The Commodore lightsaber, perhaps. Yeah, I like that.
Ignition 2.
We can turn some of those incredible renders by Dan Tutil or the oh-so-nostalgic inventions by Jem Tejkam into real Commodore products that we develop and release, and again, take you along with us in the development journey, even flying to Shenzhen to the factory to watch them coming off the production line. We can do so much here. Now, creators, you know who you are, and I've loved all the samples that you've sent for unboxing and review, which means we've kind of already QC'd them in a way. But so many of those deserve the Commodore name, so if that interests you and excites you, reach out at the form below. And if you happen to be a Commodore fan and an angel investor, drop us a line as well. There may be a really interesting way you could get involved, although it's probably not what you think. But what we're about to pitch to Commodore is a true win-win. The community licensing helps bring Commodore back in a sustainable way, avoiding another bankruptcy or abandonment. And in return, Commodore gives us something we've always dreamed of, a way to become an official part of the real, original brand. Don't forget 15%. We think a flat 6.4% royalty based on your wholesale price feels really fair. No $5,000 a year, no 5% of your revenue, none of that. Just simple, clean and fair. You sell a $5 badge for $2.50 wholesale, you pass 16 cents to Commodore, and that's it. You help keep Commodore alive, and you're officially legit. I know I would, but I feel like we'd all pay a little bit more to know that we're actually keeping the brand we love so much in our hearts and actually in the world. And that's what our license is, after all. It's not red tape, it's a red carpet. Speaking of red, it's why the official Chelsea Football Club now officially licenses the brand from the very same Commodore Corporation BV, because of course Commodore sponsored them in the 80s and 90s. Now a quick but really important point, because we know how passionate our community is. If I've learned anything working in movies like Star Wars that I don't like to talk about how I was in Star Wars, it's that there's a reason a movie like Star Wars that I was in usually has just one director. Not because others don't have better ideas, but because trying to steer a project by committee almost always sinks the ship before it even leaves the dock. If you asked the 14-year-old me, then of course it would be my literal dream come true and honour to serve as CEO of this licensee for that kid with dreams, but also in the spirit of shared dreams, as a representative for all of you big kids, the fans who've kept the Commodore flame burning.
Hi, I'm Jeri Ellsworth. Some of you may know me from the Commodore 64D TV or some of the toys that I worked on. I've known PERIFAX for quite some time, and when I heard what he was doing with Commodore, I got very excited, and I knew I needed to be involved. So I've been dedicating some time to advise, and we've even been exploring several projects that we can co-develop together. And so if there's anyone that can do great things with, the legacy of Commodore, that would be Perry.
I strongly believe that you are maybe the only person on the planet who can do it right.
And Sean and Leo, the guys who kickstarted this whole thing, they have volunteered to be Chief Operating Officer and Chief Technology Officer. And even my dear friend Alex Rosenblatt, who is a humongous Commodore fan. I'm not kidding, when I visited his office when he worked at 20th Century Fox, he had a Commodore 64 in his office, an office that was actually in the skyscraper that starred in the movie Die Hard. That's how cool he is. But he wants to jump in, making sure everybody's money goes where it's meant to, especially that charity component. You see, this dream isn't just about nostalgia for us big kids. I think that we can give today's underprivileged kids bit of a spark of that same nostalgia and joy that we felt. I know I was incredibly lucky in childhood, and so many of us were as well. But there are so many kids growing up today who just won't have that same nostalgia, that same happiness when they look back at today. So if we can save Commodore, and it is a big if, we know the magic that Commodore holds. So I also want to launch a component of all of what we're doing here. We're going to, I think, call it Commodore Care, and the objective will be to raise funds and also maybe even put brand new Commodore computers into children's hospitals, schools, foster homes and charities to give those kids that spark of joy. Now, I've actually got a bit carried away and already discussed this in some depth with some real charities. I was amazed to find out that this concept actually already exists. And there are charities like these ones who I've reached out to that specialize in putting video games and consoles and computers into those sort of places. But another one I've reached out to is called Caldwell Children. It was founded by John Caldwell, who founded Phones for You. They have this beautiful butterfly-shaped headquarters, and we're going to build a Commodore 80s Dream Arcade inside there. This charity makes life fairer for kids with ADHD and autism. And I think it'll be fantastic to have a place that kids can not only go to sort of escape from the overstimulating modern world, but also sit down, plug in a cartridge, play Jupiter Land or something. But also they're going to team up with Keele University across the road. So the students there will come in and help the kids in the charity do a bit of coding, start with BASIC, maybe move on to C++ and Python, or they can just use a Commodore PC and work on their resume or CV. I've pledged some of these already and £150,000 to get things started, and we're going to see how we go. But globally, we're going to do the same sort of thing, again, if we can make this work with your help. I would love to fly out to charities like St. Jude's Children's Hospital, install those Commodore 64s and maybe, as I said, future Commodores that we might be able to create, and take you guys along the ride with me. I think it's really important to turn our looking back and our nostalgia into something forward-facing as well, powered by that happiness of childhood nostalgia, powered by Commodore, just like it always was. Now, I wish it was possible for people to offer crowdfunded actual shares in such a licensing company, but sadly, international investing laws make that tricky. It's totally illegal on Kickstarter to do that, but also in some countries like Canada, crowdsourced shares are not allowed at all. And in the UK, it's only allowed if you earn over £200,000 a year. Now, trust us, we've been trying to make that work and organise all of that for you. We even did a series of pitches to startengine.com, but they only have a 1% acceptance rate, and it just wasn't meant to be. Now, as I'm sure you'll understand, this pitch video isn't meant for public viewing. Maybe I'll share it privately with my Patreon supporters. But we are about to send it to the people who hold the keys to the Commodore trademarks today, Commodore Corporation BV. And I have to say, this whole process is not only exhilarating, but for weeks now I've genuinely been feeling that everything I've learned before YouTube and through the community since has led to this one moment, this one click. I really feel like this is the one thing I was meant to do. A few days passed, and then weeks, and we're still waiting today. Okay, apparently we've got a reply from Commodore. Sean just texted me, and he said there's something unexpected in it. I don't know what that means, and I'm about to find out.
Yes, we can grant you an exclusive license, but your team seems to know Commodore better than we do. We might like to sell you the whole company.
One man can make a difference, Perry. Or one woman. Or dog. The Fractics, lone curators in a vintage world. The world of retro recipes.